Hey everyone, the Varietal Show is back. We've got wine in front of you, and guess what? I got a great guy in front of you. This is Levi Seed, my great friend, the sommelier here. We're at Joel Palmer House in Willamette Valley. This is like one of my favorite restaurants in the world. I'm really not kidding you, and I'll tell you why in a few minutes. But the great thing is that Levi and I have become friends over the past few years, and he's one of those kinds of sommeliers that I respect so much, and he respects me, and we just have a great time together. He comes down to Sonoma County from Willamette Valley, and I'm happy to help him like go see some great wineries.
Absolutely.
And the same thing is when I come up here, I want him to be with me when I go to great wineries, and we just have fun together.
Heck yeah.
And the more important thing is this restaurant rocks, and that's the most important thing about them all. Is like when you think about Oregon's Willamette Valley, it's an amazing area. We all knew that along, like over the past 15, 20 years. But before that, it was like Pioneersville. Like no one in their right mind would come here, especially for winemakers, but restaurateurs, not at all. And that's the wonderful thing about this place, is this is where restaurateurs came, and especially to this restaurant. You want to tell us a little bit about the Joel Palmer House real quick?
Absolutely. So the Joel Palmer House, we actually started the restaurant in 1916 in Reading, Pennsylvania. It was called Joe's Tavern back in the time, and this was started by Chef Chris's great-grandfather, Joe. They're Zarnecki, Joe Zarnecki, so they are a Polish background, Polish family. Mushrooms are a huge part of the Polish culture, and so they decided to create a mushroom-themed restaurant. Every single course, every item, every day of the year had mushrooms. And Joe's was thriving in Pennsylvania. Chef Chris's father then took over in, probably in the 80s, 1980s, I think.
It might have been a little bit earlier. There might be
50s or 80s.
Yeah.
Chris, if you're watching this, I'm sorry for butchering the story.
Yeah. And I don't even know. Sorry, Chris. But we love you too.
Chris's
we love the whole
took
family.
over, and they moved the restaurant here in 1996. They purchased the historical house of Joel Palmer, who was one of the original pioneers here in Oregon. He helped pave the trail for not only one, but three separate Oregon Trail parties. And this was his house. They converted it into a fine dining restaurant, and first day of opening was 97, and we've been here ever since. Still a mushroom-themed focused restaurant, mushrooms every course, every item, every day of the year.
Hell yeah.
All locally foraged too. We don't do any farming, cultivating. Everything is wildly foraged. And we also have the largest selection of Oregon Pinot Noir in the country. So close to 3,000 bottles in our cellar, totaling in about 500 different selections. So it's quite amazing.
So you see why I'm down here, you guys? Yeah, obvious. This is an amazing cellar. Levi and I, every time I come in here, we have great times together, and we get to talk food and wine, and he does it every night. I mean, this is the wonderful thing about it. And I gotta say, for Chris, Chef Chris, really blew our minds out, and that's why we're drinking Reisling to open up here. Chef, being an amazing chef, he was very new to the biz. I mean, the family was totally into it. When he really got out of the military and he got really into becoming a chef is when Doug Frost, the great Doug Frost, reaching out to you, Doug, one of the great masters of wine and also master sommelier, one of the rare people in the world. Him and I got to come here, and we actually drank Riesling with Harry Peterson Nedry here, and 5 other producers that were here. And this Chef Chris was brand new. He was following the tradition of his family, but we got to come here and we had an out-of-body experience with this food and these wines. And there's something special besides Pinot Noir and Pinot Gris and the things that we think about Willamette Valley. There's so much more going on here, and that was one of those moments for, I think, I'll speak on behalf of Doug Frost and me, one of those moments that really blew us away. And that's why, getting to know Levi and me together and having some fun times together, it's a true camaraderie of great sommeliers. And
I forgot to mention as well, Chris took over in 2008.
2008. So that's exactly, so it would have been in IPNC, International Pinot Noir Celebration, in 2008 that we came in. And it must have been he was in for a couple months before we got here. And he put out a menu that was like a mind blower. And I mean, when you get into this whole thing that we went through tonight at this amazing dinner, once again, at this great restaurant. And I'm sorry that Chris couldn't be here, but he will be on the show at some point soon. But family calls, and we acknowledge that. So that's why I got some time with this man. And so, you know, here you are. You're in a very a place that's become so popular. It's a popular destination. This restaurant is a popular destination. I mean, what are the clients like these days? I mean, how's it changed just over since pandemic has happened? You know.
So we've changed quite a bit since the pandemic. You know, we've moved away from doing a la carte. Before we had a la carte, and we did Mushroom Madness, which is our 5-course tasting as kind of our standard. And nowadays we have elevated our experience even further. We've added what is called now the Omakase, or Oregon Omakase as we call it, which is kind of an all-inclusive, really we don't like to say, but all-you-can-eat kind of experience. Omakase just meaning to entrust your chef. You just sit down, relax, and we start sending out food till you're full. It kind of gets you a chance to see everything we have to offer here. To continue that even further, we've now integrated the Omakase Tatakube, which is very much the Omakase as a whole, but now it includes more luxury items, caviar, A5 Wagyu, foie gras, you know, all the little things that everyone likes.
Because we deserve it, right?
Oh yeah, totally. Our clientele is, we have a lot of regulars that come here, and these are guests of ours that are just really close friends. You know, we've had a few people that have dined here over 150 times in their lifetime. We have some that come back and always get the Omakase. We have some that want to try new things all the time. Our demographic, though, I've noticed is mostly out of state. I would say about 85%.
Like me?
Like you.
Yeah.
About 85% of our entire clientele is out of Oregon, or so outside of Oregon.
Yeah.
A lot of Texas, a lot of New York, a lot of Chicago, but also quite a bit of international as well.
It's reflective of the success of Willamette Valley just overall. I think
Absolutely.
that it's become a super destination. Listen, I live in Sonoma County. You don't think we're a super destination, or Napa Valley and some other places, Walla Walla, Washington, and these kinds of places. But, you know, this is the West Coast, and this is what we are. And your focus on mushrooms might be my favorite thing about why your family decided, or his family, Chris's family, decided to come here, is because, like, this is mushroom capital. When I lived here for a few years of my life, we would go out and we'd hunt mushrooms, my dad and I. And I mean, how cool is this? And they came here and they started a restaurant. Actually, their biggest focus is on that, and then they'll build around it. And that's an amazing thing. I mean, they had mushroom pierogies, wild mushroom pierogies. Have you ever had one of those? They're amazing. You know, like, and this is like what they built up on the East Coast, and they brought it out here. It's not even conceptually. I have no place in Northern California that I can think of that I've ever heard them serve wild mushroom pierogi.
And we still have our classics as well, the staples. These three items that were served at the original restaurant, including Chef Chris's mother's 3-mushroom tart. We have Chef Chris's father's risotto, and of course his great grandfather's mushroom soup. That was they were all served in Reading, Pennsylvania, and we continue to serve them here today to this day.
Well, we've got another I could have picked anything out of here, and he would have let me, of course, of this cellar. But I actually asked him to pick one out. But let's talk a little bit about this in Authentique. Can we see that? There we go. There, Authentique.
Authentique Keeler Vineyard 2017.
So tell us a little bit about this wine and why you picked this one. Of all the wines, we just were tasting this amazing Ribbon Ridge Riesling, which is kind of the reason I came here in the first place. Thank you, Harry Peterson Nedry, and the great Riesling movement that was happening here. But here we go into the 2017 Pinot Noir version of it. But remember, we're like 5 years later, and here we are in 2022. These wines are starting to taste good. Why is that so different than like that 2000? You know, like when we got into those heat spells right there, 14, 15, 16, which were total heat spells that Oregon winemakers were not anticipating it to be 3 years in a row that you had the highest temperatures of all times. And here we go into a vintage that's really what Oregon should be.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
The reason I picked this wine, so Nick Keeler, he is the winemaker and proprietor for this label. He is probably, in my opinion, one of the top 3, if not the best winemaker in the entire valley. Nick is also a dear friend of mine, so I'm trying to be as unbiased as possible. But he makes very, very exclusive and elegant Pinot Noirs. He only makes about 1,000 cases a year. He actually has his own, I don't know if it's a cooperage, but he gets his own barrels, French barrels. He does most of his
you're
fermenting.
big if you can get your own barrels.
Oh yeah, totally.
Just
He does most of his fermenting in a mixture of French oak, stainless steel, concrete, and amphora. And I've tasted wines unlike his in any other place in the valley. 100% biodynamically farmed as well. Yep. It's mostly marine sedimentary soils on his property, but he does all the farming himself, all the winemaking himself. He has a small team that's now helping out as well, since he's getting a little bit bigger. But he has a way with the valley, a way with the wines. He understands his vineyard, and I think that's really important for winemakers. You know, a lot of them have the knowledge behind making wine, but understanding the fruit that you're getting. I was actually just with Nick a couple days ago. We were tasting through his new harvest 2022s, and right off the vine we were picking, you know, Pommard, Wadensville, and he was showing me how to eat the clusters.
You just said 2 of my favorite words ever.
Right?
Pommard and Wadensville.
But he hands me this cluster. He was like, you know, oh, eat some of these berries. I'm like trying to pick them off.
A Pinot Noir. Yeah.
trying to pick them off one by one. He's like, no, don't do that. He's like, let me show you how to do it. So he takes this cluster. He's like, takes a bite out of it. And that's how you do it. And he's like, taste that fruit. I'm like, I mean, it's grape juice, but you know, when you taste fruit, this we're tasting fruit. This is some Pinot. And it's incredible grapes, incredible style of wine. Some of the most elegant Pinot I've ever had in the valley. 17 is my personal favorite vintage as well. For me, I like my wines to be higher acid, more red fruit driven, more toned, more Burgundian, as we like to say. And 2017 was considered to be the last cold vintage in the valley compared to 2011, which was the coldest vintage. So it does have a little more restraint, does have a little more, I guess you could say, opulence and vibrancy.
I love this. I mean, it fills the entire mouth with flavors. I mean, but they're vibrant. There's a lot of black fruit in here, actually, and there's a wild berry characteristic of it. And it's like, I would say it's raspberry, but it's black raspberry, which is crazy. And there's wild strawberry, which is, I get a lot of that out of this area. But there's also that Wadensville 2A kind of like that, almost that cola, and in my opinion, much more of a root beer barrel kind of flavor to it, which is like unbelievable. But it's only part of it, and this is complexity inside a glass, and this is what we want, and this is what you want on the dishes at this restaurant, because they're damn good, and they're not one-dimensional. They're actually multi-dimensional dishes that you serve here. I mean, if one thing, like we serve wild mushrooms, and this is in pasta, or this is what, it's not it at all. I mean, there's so many things going on in each plate, isn't it?
Quite a bit.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I'm under the impression still of what, you know, what grows together goes together. We've all heard that term about Somms, but you know, it goes deeper than that. You know, Oregon has technically one of the largest living organisms on the planet. The mycelium that goes beneath the ground that connects all the trees and rootstock. It's also what helps create mushrooms. And this spans between Oregon, Washington, and California, but the concentration of it is here in Oregon. That's why we have so many varietals of mushrooms. You know, matsutakis, maitakis, Oregon truffles, black trumpets, mushrooms.
Like one of my favorites.
We have all the mushrooms here. Lobster mushrooms.
Candy caps.
Candy caps. Well, sometimes, but
not all the time.
So you know, there's millions of different types of mushrooms, and there's millions of different types of Pinot Noir. So what grows together goes together, goes further than that, because there's such a symbiotic relationship between all the mushrooms and all the Pinot. It's they connect to each other on a molecular level. There's so many different phenolics and esters and different types of little things going on, nuances that each species can offer, and these are all connected through the Oregon terroir.
Are you guys getting all this? Because this is like interesting information. Just kidding. You can come up here anytime and enjoy this, and that's the wonderful thing about this. That's why I come to this, man. This is why I come to this restaurant, and why we are joined at the hip as far as sommeliers and great things that we share with you guys. As far as like what we care about, it's not just about wine at all. It's about the food, and it's about the culture and the subculture and everything around us. And I feel like this restaurant really exemplifies that in so many great ways, and just why you and I became great friends. And I hope you guys all understand this. Like, sommeliers that work at great restaurants, that work with great chefs, I mean, there's an allegiance that is like beyond anything else. I mean, there's sommeliers out there, and I'm sorry if I'm offending some out there, that don't care about the chefs that they work with. And that's not the case of him and I. I never have been that way. And it's one of those things that you working with an amazing chef. I mean, Chef Chris is like the real deal.
Yeah.
And he's a guy that's taught me a lot, taught Doug Frost a lot. I mean, come on. Just don't teach a guy like Doug Frost just anything. But
I love Chris. I've been here for just over 2 years, and I can say at this moment, Chris, yes, he's my direct boss and supervisor and all that, but he's more than that. We've been together for so long. I manage the front of house and the wine program here. He manages the back of the house. He's put a lot of trust in me. Chris is my mentor. He's my coach. He's my friend. He's also my brother. So cheers, Chris. Love you, man.
Here to Chris. And here's to you guys. This is a great Oregon experience, and it's waiting for you guys. This Joel Palmer House is one of my favorite restaurants on the West Coast. California, Washington, Oregon. This is one of my favorites of them all. And when you have an amazing sommelier like Levi and the whole staff here, actually, it's just the whole deal. You want to have the real experience in a region, you come to someone like him. And that's why I appreciate you, brother.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for sharing this great wine with us. And I hope you guys all start to follow this brand too.
Authentique.
Authentique.
Nick Hiller on Instagram, on Facebook, all the things.
And don't forget about our great friends with Ribbon Ridge and their Ribbon Ridge Winery. And it's kind of why I became the greatest fan of this place and why I wanted to bring a bottle of it. Is because this is just a special moment for me, but it happens every time I come here. So it's waiting for you. And thanks once again for tuning in to our great show and to us as two sommeliers. Thank you. Cheers.